The term SUV is a very broad one, and it can mean anything from a Kia Seltos right through to a Maserati Levante. But in the middle of that is the class of car that helped define the entire genre. I'm talking about cars like the Jeep Wrangler. Welcome back to Four Wheels on the Seat. My name is Alex Dalrymple, and this is my channel where I review a brand new car every week. And can you do me a favor and please hit subscribe and like if you enjoy the video? I'd really appreciate that. This week I'm checking out the Jeep Wrangler Unlimited Rubicon. Now the Jeep Wrangler has been on the road since around about the mid-1980s, but it can trace its lineage all the way back to World War II Jeeps, and a lot of those design cues are still with this car today. And of course its ruggedness and ability to get out of just about any situation, as well as being able to scale the side of a mountain, has made it a favourite in the four-wheel drive community. Now the difference between a regular Wrangler and an Unlimited is the number of doors. The Unlimited gets 5 doors as opposed to the regular Wrangler's 3. And you can see some of that original World War II design language up the front here, especially with the big round headlights that are now LEDs. We've got the signature 7-bar grille and some big tow hooks here to help you get out of any nasty situations, plus that enormous bumper. The squared off wheel arches mean that this car won't be mistaken for anything else other than a Jeep. Inside there are 17-inch alloys covered in 32-inch off-road rubber, meaning this car is ready to head out into the great outdoors straight out of the dealership. The doors have got exposed hinges. They actually give you the tools to remove these, so if you're driving along the beach at Fraser Island, you can go door free. In fact, you can also remove just about everything you see here pretty much, including the soft top roof up here, or freedom roof as they call it, because of course they would. And this rear section is also removable as well. Classic Jeep look at the back here. I really like these square rear light clusters and the full-size spare tyre, and no mistaking what brand of car this is. The rear boot space, which opens in 2 sections here, is 900 litres. I think that's actually floor to ceiling, and it more than doubles with the rear seats down. There's a storage compartment underneath the floor here, because of course there's no spare tyre to make room for. We've got the subwoofer back here too for the sound system, and under the floor here also are a whole bunch of holes for the various screws that you can rest in here if you're taking the car to pieces. So there's space here for the door hinge screws, the roof screws, the windshield screws. It's a convenient spot to keep them all. I do really like the way the bonnet is secured on this car. You've got to flip open these latches on either side and then push the fastener across. There we go. Proppers up here. Oh, that is really hot. Okay. Under the bonnet, we've got a 3.6 litre 6-cylinder petrol engine with 209 kilowatts of power and 347 Newton meters of torque. Power is driven to all 4 wheels, or 2 wheels should you choose, via an automatic transmission. Jeep don't actually quote the combined fuel economy on their website, at least as far as I could find, but they do have a highway figure of 7.8 litres per 100 kilometres, which is a bit on the high side. Okay, getting into the Jeep Wrangler. First thing I'm going to do is open the freedom roof to just let the freedom pour in. It's not the fastest, but we got there in the end. So inside, everything is just really solid and really tough. We've got nice materials that feel really good, and everything's sort of screwed in. There's a lot of buttons in here, probably I suspect more than they technically need to be. They could put some more functionality into the center console screen, but I think Wrangler owners like it that way. They like their switches, and they've got all a very satisfying feeling to them too. The 8-inch center console screen is a little bit on the small side. The good news is the forthcoming 2024 model gets an all-new 12-inch screen, and I suspect brand new software too, but that's not to throw shade on this one. I wasn't so sure about the system when I first used it, but over the last week or so of using it, I've actually come to really like it. It's a bit different to anything else I've ever used, but it does a pretty good job. The maps aren't the best, I will say that. I'd prefer to be using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which you can of course do. You'll just need a USB cable to plug them in. The sound system has 9 speakers, including the subwoofer. It's powered by Alpine and makes a pretty nice noise. Here in the apps page, we also have the off-road pages, which give you additional information that is handy to have when you're taking this car into the great outdoors. It shows you your exact GPS coordinates. We've got the drivetrain information here, including the steering angle, the transfer case, whether the sway bar is connected or disconnected, what's going on with the front and rear axles. We've got additional accessory gauges showing you coolant temperature, oil temp, that kind of thing, and the trail cams, which is just a fancy term really for the front and rear cameras. Moving down the dash here, we've got the climate controls, which have been screwed in, and they're pretty easy to use. Further down, we've got window controls here. All 4 windows can only be controlled from this console here. There are no controls on the doors. I suspect that's because the doors are removable. It would be quite a bit of a job to reconnect them once you took the doors off and put them back on. Under this flap here are your USB-A and USB-C inputs, and weirdly, a cigarette lighter. Don't see too many of those anymore. It's also your 12-volt output as well. Underneath that, a very cool little red display here, which is how you control your front and rear axles. You can have the front and rear disconnected or the rear only, turn the system off there. The additional off-road plus button here, you can disconnect the sway bar as well to give you more traction at the front. Next to that, we've got 4 auxiliary buttons here, which can be connected to any extra electrical item you like. You just have to wire it into some wiring in the engine bay, and if you're not an auto electrician, I wouldn't suggest trying to do that on your own. It looks quite complicated. I did a bit of searching on YouTube. In fact, there is so much customization available in this car. There are literally hundreds of things you can attach to it and change to it, and there's any number of suppliers who can help you with that kind of thing. We've got the 4-wheel drive controls here, putting the car into 2 high, 4 high, part-time 4 high or 4 low. A really good feeling gear shifter here. It has such a solid feel to it, with a nice sort of trigger button at the front there. A couple of cup holders. We've got an old school handbrake here, a small tray which is good for your phone, and a nice deep center console bin underneath that. The instrument cluster here is a hybrid digital analog unit. It looks pretty good. You can change the center display to a few different things. I like having digital speedo on there personally. The steering wheel has some nice red stitching here with grey leather. It's got a good feel to it. One annoying feature is that the volume controls are not here at the front. They're actually at the back on a couple of rocker switches. The floors have rubber mats, which keeps everything nice and easy to clean. In fact, even more so because you can actually hose down this interior, and there's like a Venturi style vent here that allows water to run out but not back in. Annoyingly for the driver though, there's no footrest here, so your foot is just kind of awkwardly sitting flat on the floor. The seats are leather and reasonably comfortable. I have sat in better. There's no electric adjustment, it's fully manual, and it took me a little while to work out how to change the angle of the rear of the seat. There's actually a tab down here that you've got to pull out to do that. The rest of it is controlled down the bottom here with levers and a wheel. Riding up high means you have fantastic visibility, pretty much out the, give you good visibility out the sides, not so great in the back because the rear window is partially obscured by the spare tyre. But the downside of riding up high means that you don't have a lot of visibility right in front of you. So you can see to the front corners of the bonnet, but not really what's right in front of you. So you just need to be a little bit wary of that in tight parking spaces, or especially if there's small children around. There's no 360-degree parking cameras on this car either. There's only 2, one pointing forwards and the other pointing backwards. The Jeep Wrangler was originally designed as a 3-door, and it was really some years before it got the 2 extra doors here at the back. So it does feel like a little bit of an afterthought, and it's a little bit of a squash, especially for somebody my size. I'm 190 centimeters tall behind my own seating position, and my knees are pretty firmly into the seat in front of me. But plenty of headroom though, especially with the Freedom roof open. It is very nice looking at the clouds and the trees today. It's very light and very airy. The seats are pretty comfortable, more of this nice red stitching with leather. We've got the middle seat here, which turns into an armrest if there's no one sitting here, with cup holders, and there's also 2 more rear air vents. Rear window controls are back here too. I didn't know that. My children were complaining before that they couldn't lower the windows themselves. Well, they can. And 4 USBs, 2 USB-As and 2 USB-Cs. That's pretty much overkill actually. As well as a 230 volt, 150 watt power outlet, which you can plug anything into you like. One of the first things you notice when you drive the Wrangler is the noise, and that's a combination of a really nice note from the 6-cylinder engine and also road noise, specifically from those big off-road tyres. They're not the quietest ones to be getting around in, and also with the cloth roof you can hear a lot of the outside world as well. Refinement is definitely not one of this car's stronger points, but it's not really the point of it either. When it downshifts, it does make a nice noise though. In fact, there can be so much exterior noise that if you're listening to, say, an audiobook or a podcast, you might need to actually turn the volume up a little bit, especially if you drive through a tunnel. The steering on this car is obviously calibrated to driving off-road in fairly extreme conditions, which as a result makes it feel a little bit sort of numb and understeery on the road. There's not a lot of road feel here, and it's just a bit too light for me. You know how normally you go around a corner and you can kind of almost let go of the steering wheel, or at least, you know, release the pressure a little bit and the car will kind of straighten up on its own? The Wrangler does not do that. You've got to actually really steer the wheel back yourself, otherwise you're just going to continue on that turn into a parked car. Whoa! And this car will randomly think that I'm about to careen into another car for no apparent reason, like it did just then. There was nothing in front of me. Gets your heart going though, you know you're alive. Now, although this is a very large, medium-sized SUV and it feels big, you ride up high, you feel really in command, you've got a great view of all the traffic in front of you, and it has a lot of road presence because people let you in when you want to merge. This car only does have a 3-star ANCAP safety rating. But in terms of the safety gear you do get, there's rear cross traffic alert, adaptive cruise control, and collision avoidance. While it's a really fun car to drive, and you know, on a wet day like today especially, it does feel very safe, it's quite an intense car to drive just because of its size. And that comes down to even things like parking in a shopping centre car park. Just because it's so wide, it doesn't fit into a lot of regular car spots. And the same applies when you're driving on a road, and if someone doesn't keep far enough to the left, it feels like you could quite easily collide with them. So you do have to kind of be constantly on alert while you're driving this car around town. So while it's a fantastic car to take away with you on an adventure, it's perhaps not so good for daily driving, taking the kids to and from school, mostly because it's really hard for them just to get in it. I have to admit, I was prepared not to like this car. It's not really for me, but I totally get the appeal of it. When you're driving it, you really do feel a little bit indestructible, like you can go anywhere and do just about anything. Now, I've spoken to a few Jeep owners who anecdotally sort of say that the ownership experience of one of these cars is not necessarily the best. They were citing hard to get parts and shorter service intervals, and the 5-year, 100,000 kilometre warranty is not fantastic. You don't want to be driving too far. But if you're looking for really tough, reliable transport that you can customise and have a great time with, and maybe even move the family around if you need to, then the Jeep Wrangler could be for you.